I just got back from my shows that I do at the Western Standard downtown, got to my car, been watching the news. Those probably by the time this comes up, everybody know Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck at an event in Utah. At the time of this recording, uh, it was saying he was in critical condition and in a hospital. Anybody seen the close up of that awful video knows, though, that it probably doesn't look very good. I imagine it'll probably be confirmed one way or another by the time this goes to air. But what a horrible, horrible thing. I'm getting exhausted with the horrible videos this week, the violence. Over and over, before this even happened, and as I was getting ready for my show, and I was looking at you couldn't help it. You're just scrolling through social media, and you're seeing the stills and pictures of that poor Ukrainian girl murdered in cold blood by that monster on a train in Charlotte. And then I see these pictures of in this video of Charlie Kirk. It's hard to avoid. I'm in news. It's what I do. I gotta watch these. I don't have to watch every one, but it just wears on you. I worry. There's a lot to worry about. This desensitization to violence, this propensity to violence. Charlie Kirk was a young man. He wasn't a politician. He was a pundit. You might not agree with his views. A lot of people don't. That's the way it works. Things are polarized. Most people won't take a gun and try to kill them. The idiot responses, and most of what I talk about anyways is mainstream media and how awful it is. Apparently MSNBC, one of the pundits right off the bat said, well, this looks like it might have been a case of a gun being fired celebratory way by one of Charlie Kirk's supporters in the audience, and that's how it happened. Like, I hope if that really was what she said on MSNBC, that she's fired. God, you guys are stupid. You really are. Either way, I don't know. I hope he pulls through. It doesn't look good. Like I said, if you saw that video and you saw the way it was. But we should never be in a place where we're trying to shut down the voices, censor. And this does put a chill on discourse. I'm nowhere near the level of Charlie Kirk, of course. But I worry at times. I get some pretty crazy emails and communications. All of us do in this. You think of Charlie Hebdo, with lunatics came down and murdered a bunch of journalists in France because they didn't like what they said about Islam. And it's not a place we can afford to be. I do a lot of public speaking appearances. Thankfully the odds are extremely slim that some nutcase is going to come out and take a shot at me, but you can't help but wonder about the person in the back of the audience sometimes when you see stuff like this. So some people will choose not to speak anymore, and they'll choose not to do public appearances, and it's a tragic consequence of this violent approach to discourse. It's a bad development in what's supposed to be a civilized world. I don't know what else I could say. At this point, it's unknown who did it or what the motivation was, or whether or not, Mr. Kirk is going to pull through. It's certainly the top news story right now. Yeah, a lot of bad news. This is stuff I cover, though. We'll move on to more international stuff. Poland, speaking of escalation of potential violence and things, they're claiming they shot down drones that crossed into their airspace from Russia. This is a big development. People had better understand what this signifies. I hope it doesn't explode in anything more. It doesn't seem to be so far. But Poland is a NATO country, and it responded and fired and shot down those drones. Russia, allegedly, apparently with these drones, made an incursion on a NATO country's airspace. That's how this war can expand. That's where this could become a heck of a lot bigger, guys. Because if Russia starts attacking NATO countries, NATO, by nature of that agreement, is supposed to respond then and defend that country. That's part of why Russia was so upset with anybody even flirting with Ukraine becoming a NATO country, because then it would potentially stop Russia from invading them, as they did. Either way, apparently 19 drones went into Poland. I don't know what's going on or what Putin's thinking if that's the case, but this is an escalation we all got to worry about. Getting onto the crime subjects, because again, violence, crime, and there's so much in so many awful cases, but we got to talk about them. We're not going to fix it if we don't. So there was a bail hearing for that monster, that piece of crap, who sexually assaulted, broke into a home, and molested a child so badly the child had to go in for specialized medical care. And of course, it turns out that this scumbag had recently been released for doing this crime to a child before. He's now, and I'll refuse to say she, see, this is the ridiculousness of this discourse, is now saying that he's a she and she should go to a female prison. No, this shouldn't even be in consideration. Or at least cut his junk off first. And I'm not talking about sex change operation, just cut it off. There, then you can go in while you're healing, stitched up. But there was a bail hearing in St. Catharines. I guess it's kind of a positive development because there were like 150 people outside protesting at the bail hearing. You don't hear about that very often because we're sick and tired of this flimsy, pathetic justice system leading to the injury and death of citizens and innocent people and children. And, we understand one-offs, some nut goes off the rails and something happens and does something you didn't see it. It's when it's repeated, there's no excuse. And these limp-wristed judges should almost be held accountable. I saw somebody make a good analogy a while back, pointing out that, and it kind of struck home with me because I used to own a bar. If you overserve somebody and they drive drunk and they kill somebody, you as the bar owner end up on the hook. So what about these losers in the justice system? Letting repeat violent offenders loose over and over and over again so they can hurt more people. When are we going to hold these judges accountable on this? Maybe if we start holding judges accountable, even with fines, cut into that cushy salary, I bet we'll see some real sentences given to violent offenders. Wouldn't that be refreshing? That American case with that girl, again, that murdered on a train, the guy who did it, he had 14 prior offenses. This isn't just a Canadian thing. He never should have been loose to do this, but he was, and a young woman, lost her life. And that's turning into much more, on the social disorder, the problem, the misery that's going on out there. Because, of course, now there's racial elements getting tied to this. I guess when he walked away, he said something like, one more dead white girl or something. This isn't helping. This is not good. And he should never have been loose. Either way, this man, why would people think that this fake trans person would get bail? Well, because he has before. Plus, he's Indigenous, guys. And we give lighter sentences to Indigenous people. And how's that working out? Well, it's not, because still most of the people in our prisons way disproportionately are Indigenous. So the lighter sentence concept isn't working. Have we considered ending the reserve system? Maybe, because it's 100% failure in every level? I don't know. Well, those courses keep coming up, and here's another one that came up. The Edmonton Police Service, hats off to them, called out the prosecution service in Alberta. And the police usually stay the heck out of, the courts and justice like that. But in this case, because the prosecution, I guess, is looking at cutting a deal with a scumbag murderer, guess what? Indigenous, killed an 8-year-old girl, her stepdaughter. And then along with 4 other guys, put her in a bag and took her down to the reserve south of Edmonton, a hockey bag, and dumped the body, charged with accessory to murder and indignity human remains. Who knows what's going on? And they're going to plea it down so she'll get an 8-year sentence. This is first-degree murder. Why? But the Edmonton Police Service, at least, because they know the inside. And here's the other thing with these cases. They never give the names because they're protecting the identity of the child. But the police service knows that this scumbag is this woman. They probably know she's got a filthy, vile, murderous history. And they're calling it a miscarriage of justice if this gets a plea deal, which it sounds like it's already in the works. And they're asking for provincial intervention. I hope the province does. I like seeing judicial independence, but when our judges are misserving us this badly, they got to step up. And we had a case in Alberta, too, with, again, Indigenous parents. They boiled their child. Well, that's what happened. They boiled the child. They got a 6-year sentence. The child died. They had gotten the child back. The child had been in and out of social services because they'd been abusing the child already. But we've got this thing as well that's been happening since the 60s scoop, that we must try to return the children to Indigenous family members no matter what. Well, guess what? The reason the children were taken in the first place, believe it or not, social services does not typically want to go in and take children out of a household. That's not what they want to do. When they did, it means they were at an extreme end. This child got tortured to death because it was returned to the parents again. And they got 6 years. And that was a few years ago. And, you know, Canada with double time served and all that, they're going to be out to breed and have new kids to torture to death again soon. But they're Indigenous, so we got to make an exception. We don't tell anybody about it. Same thing with, people remember Senator Paula Simons. She was a journalist, and she reported heavily on Serenity, who was a young child who was, again, tortured and starved and beaten to death by her caregivers, who, again, the child had been taken by social services, but social services was forced to give them back to family members because it's Indigenous again, and those Indigenous family members torture that child to death. They got 5 years, I think, for that. How's that all working out? You know, is this stopping it? I don't know. You know, I know I'm sounding crabbier and more tired and exhausted than usual today. It's just been so much violence and so much negativity. But if we don't talk about it, we don't rant about it, we don't hold people accountable about it, it's not going to get better, is it? We got to take the exhaustion, the emotional exhaustion, the horrified feeling of watching these violent acts online and carry on and push against it, because we can't just keep letting it happen. So that's why I'm happy to see citizens going out and making noise outside of a courthouse and say, look, we're not going to put up with this. No more bailing these monsters. Speaking of entitled losers, Alberta teachers given strike notice again, you know. I know teachers work hard. I know they have an important job. I know it has a lot of responsibility, but they also are very, very, very well compensated for it. Well into six figures after they do 10 years. Massive pension plan, 3 months off a year. But yeah, they gave the big notice today. They're going to go on strike, holding Alberta children hostage. And they always claim it's about class sizes. But then when the province said, okay, fine, we'll hire more teachers, they said, no, we want more money. They offered the teachers 12% too, and the teachers rejected that. They offered the teachers a 12% raise and to hire 3,000 more teachers to reduce class sizes. And the teachers union said, no, we want more money. So your kids are going to be stuck. You better find babysitters because the teachers are going on strike. You know, they never go on strike in summer or do the negotiations then, do they, when they got their 2 months off? No other profession gets that kind of time off, guys. This is actually kind of a fun and surprising thing in a way. We're speaking of media, Global, which tends to be pretty left in a lot of ways, but they're having Ben Mulroney hosting The West Wing, which is their political show, while Mercedes Stevenson is on maternity leave. Yeah, and Ben Mulroney's been interesting. You know, he's Brian Mulroney's son. He's been in entertainment for a long time. He did like entertainment TV or whatever. He's quite conservative, actually, very conservative. Now that he's been doing talk radio since he left the entertainment and TV thing, very unapologetically conservative. It's been refreshing. And he's just driving the left out of their minds. And now that he's taking over that show, oh, they're going bananas. It's great. But either way, maybe some networks are realizing that this hard left on everything all the time, you know, so you can only have so many Rosie Bartons, isn't gaining the viewers. So putting Mulroney in there for a while, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. And he's not apologizing for it. He said that online. Said he's, you know, he's conservative. He has views. He's a pundit. That's what he does. And that's what he's going to take to this show. Daniel Smith, Premier Smith, and Mark Carney meeting in Alberta today. We'll see. Smith has her 9 demands she made like 6 months ago, saying this is what we expect out of you, Carney. I don't think he's met any of them. And it's been about 6 months. She said it was a 6-month timeline. So if she comes out of this with nothing, eventually Smith is going to have to... Both of them are bad for inaction at this point. I shouldn't say that. Smith's pretty good for action typically. So it'll be interesting. Carney just keeps talking and doing nothing. But the deadline's up, and Smith's not going to wear this, I don't think. So if he's not going to act on what she's been asking about, I expect provincial action to come one way or another, which is fine by me. Canada's broken. Some things work out. A labor board federally, you know, still it's taken years to come all the way through this, has ruled though that a Department of National Defense, because yes, a lot, including Pedro and others, lost their jobs because they didn't want to get the COVID-19 vaccine. I don't want to discuss whether it's good or bad. My main thing is on choice, and they didn't have a choice, so they got fired. And they have decided, the federal labor board has decided the national defense was wrong when they suspended him. So he'll get compensation, I imagine, or something. But still, it's not the way we shouldn't be doing these in hindsight. We should just let people have choice to begin with. This has been a big one at the Western Standard. Be sure to get the details on that story there. So for 25 years, there's been a secret pension fund for top bureaucrats in the city. This is unreal. And City Council never approved it. It's unreal. It's called the Overcap Pension Plan. And it gives a third pension. Third, these city managers, these high-level ones, get 2 pensions already. This is one more on top of it. They were making six-figure salaries. This thing, 126 employees qualify for it currently. That's it. Yet the fund has cost $137 million to taxpayers. The group that brought that out, John Williams and the Alberta Public Affairs Corp, are demanding a forensic audit, and they should. We got fraud or something going on here. And apparently there's another $50 million in future liability. And the administrative costs are incredible. This plan cost, they did it through FOIP requests and all that and got the info on it, $23,729 in administrative costs per member for this pension plan. That's an average pension plan. The city's main one costs $151 a member to administer. This costs $23,700. Somebody is robbing us. Somebody needs to go to jail here. This is brutal. Either way, we'll be watching that as it unfolds. Good timing, right before the election. Here's, when I get some of the discussions before back and forth. So there's been a drop in international students. Campuses, are opening up and they're realizing they're having problems because they ran low on money. The issue is they got too dependent on these international students. They charge a premium for international students, and they've been getting extra money for it. Now that they don't have them, they're having difficulty adapting. Well, get over it. Cut some professors' salaries for a change. I mean, think about that. Look at the cost of a course. Look at a lecture hall with 500 students and you stuff into it, or even 100 you stuff into it. And you're only putting in, giving them how many hours a week through that. And try to tell me you're not raking in some money on that tuition as it is. What are you guys doing with it? It's time they start tightening their belt a little bit. But student leaders are fearing they aren't going to find the supports that they need this year. Well, student leaders, they're another issue altogether. But we're going to see some consequences. It's good that the federal government capped those foreign students because it was taking up the spaces and there was just only so much you could do and so much housing. But there's going to be a backlash and a consequence now as these universities try to figure out what to do without the extra money. Back to bad crime issues. 16-year-old boy arrested in the murder of an 8-year-old and 2 other teens sought. You look at the pictures online, you can see why they didn't want to talk about it. There's quite a racial element going on again in that one. This is bad, but they're looking for those murderers. In Alberta, we had a recent case of a 12-year-old boy who tried to murder his 7-year-old little brother. These are pretty rare. I hope this isn't indicative of a trend or something, but that's just what I'm saying. That's why I'm sounding so exhausted this week. These cases this week are just so awful. So many of them. But these are things I cover a lot of because I am sick and tired of the system. I just got a text I saw pop up on my screen that said Charlie Kirk died from a friend of mine who texted it, so I doubt he would sent it to me if it wasn't true. I mean, I hope it's still wrong, I guess. Just to cap off this broadcast, I guess I started with it saying I don't know. Sounds like it's confirmed, as I said, when you saw the video. You could tell it's pretty unlikely he'd survive that. Either way, guys, keep watching independent media. Keep cutting through the BS. That's how we're going to beat this ugliness. And never resort to violence. We're civilized. We're better than that.